In the shadowy depths of the Pacific during World War II, an unseen war raged. A battle fought not with roaring tanks or soaring planes, but with silent hunters prowling the deep. These submarines, crewed by unsung heroes, defied the odds, navigating minefields and outwitting destroyers to strike at the heart of the Japanese war machine. Their missions changed the tide of history, yet their stories remain shrouded in secrecy. Dive into the world of the silent shadows and discover the courage and ingenuity that turned the tide of the Pacific War. Before we continue, friends, I kindly ask you to subscribe to my channel. It takes just a second for you, but it gives me incredible motivation to keep creating these videos. I'd also greatly appreciate your comments. Thank you for your support. And now, let's dive back into the story. The vastness of the Pacific Ocean became a stage for one of the most grueling and unsung battles of World War II. A battle fought not in the open skies or on the rolling waves, but beneath them. As mighty fleets clashed and soldiers stormed beaches, another war was being waged in silence and shadow by the crews of submarines, navigating treacherous waters with skill, courage, and an acute sense of their own mortality. These silent shadows played a crucial role in shifting the tide of war, cutting off vital enemy supplies, and turning the Pacific into a perilous graveyard for Japanese shipping. The early days of the war in the Pacific painted a grim picture for the Allies. Japan's rapid expansion had overwhelmed the region, its navy dominating the seas with a deadly combination of firepower and tactics. Yet, amid this chaos, a new strategy emerged. The undersea warriors of the United States Navy found themselves at the forefront of a high-stakes campaign to sever Japan's maritime lifelines. Armed with experimental technology, torpedoes plagued by technical faults, and sheer determination, the submariners took to the depths to deliver blows to the Japanese Empire. These undersea campaigns were unlike any other. The claustrophobic confines of a submarine fostered a unique bond among its crew, a camaraderie forged under constant threat. Every dive into hostile waters meant braving enemy destroyers equipped with depth charges, skimming perilously close to underwater mines, and enduring the endless strain of operating untested and unreliable machinery. For the men aboard, the ocean was a hostile frontier, and survival was never guaranteed. Despite these challenges, the submariners were determined. They understood that their success or failure could determine the outcome of the war. Their missions were not just about sinking ships. They were part of a grand strategy to cripple Japan's ability to sustain its war effort. Submarines became the unlikely heroes of strategic blockades, lurking beneath the surface to unleash devastating torpedo strikes on vital convoys and military supply lines. The bravery of these crews transformed the submarine campaign into one of the most effective naval operations of the war. By the conflict's end, U.S. submarines had sunk more than 1,300 Japanese ships, accounting for nearly 55% of all enemy losses at sea. These achievements came at a cost. Nearly 22% of all American submariners perished, a higher casualty rate than any other branch of the military. But what drove these men to face near certain death beneath the waves? For some, it was duty. For others, revenge for Pearl Harbor. For many, it was a belief that their actions could end the war sooner and spare lives in the long run. As the Pacific became their battleground, they would prove that even in silence, their impact could resonate across oceans and through history. The story of these silent shadows is one of innovation, resilience, and sacrifice. Their battles beneath the waves remain a testament to human ingenuity and courage, a reminder that the war in the Pacific was fought not only on beaches and islands, but also in the unseen depths of the ocean. The early days of submarine warfare in the Pacific were a mix of bold experimentation, harrowing close calls, and moments of sheer ingenuity. As the United States scrambled to recover from the shock of Pearl Harbor, its submarine fleet became an indispensable tool in disrupting Japan's rapid advance across the Pacific. With limited resources and immense pressure to deliver results, these undersea warriors embarked on missions that often required as much cunning as firepower. One of the most audacious early missions was led by Commander Dudley, Mush, Morton aboard the USS Wahoo. Morton's aggressive leadership style quickly became legendary. His philosophy, summed up in the phrase, shoot first, ask questions later, marked a dramatic shift from the cautious tactics that had initially dominated American submarine strategy. On one of Wahoo's first patrols in the Solomon Islands, Morton employed a daring surface attack against a Japanese convoy, exploiting the cover of darkness to launch torpedoes at point-blank range. The mission was a success, sinking 2 enemy vessels and providing critical intelligence on Japanese troop movements. Not all missions ended in triumph. The USS Sargo, under the command of Lieutenant Commander Tyrell Jacobs, was tasked with delivering supplies to beleaguered Allied forces on the island of Corregidor in the Philippines. The submarine braved a gauntlet of Japanese patrols and aerial surveillance to reach the island, only to face mechanical issues that threatened the mission's success. The crew improvised repairs on the spot, demonstrating remarkable resilience and ingenuity. Although they managed to deliver the supplies, they were forced to abort their return mission when a Japanese destroyer caught their scent. After a tense game of underwater hide-and-seek, the Sargo narrowly escaped with its crew intact but shaken. The unpredictability of war often led to extraordinary improvisation. During one patrol in early 1942, the USS Spearfish found itself shadowed by a Japanese aircraft. Unable to dive due to a damaged ballast system, the crew rigged a decoy using flotsam and debris to distract the plane. As the enemy pilot strafed a false target, the Spearfish crept away undetected, eventually completing its reconnaissance mission. Such moments underscored the resourcefulness of submarine crews, who frequently found themselves adapting to unforeseen challenges. Beyond enemy ships, submarines targeted an array of critical objectives. The USS Sea Dragon played a key role in disrupting Japanese operations by attacking dock vessels in enemy harbors. On one particularly bold mission, the Sea Dragon infiltrated Hong Kong harbor at night. Despite the constant threat of spotlights and patrolling guard boats, the submarine launched torpedoes at a moored tanker, igniting a massive explosion that lit up the sky. The resulting fire severely disrupted Japanese resupply efforts in the region, showcasing the strategic potential of submarine raids on heavily defended targets. These daring operations came at a cost. For the crew of the USS Perch, a routine patrol near the Dutch East Indies turned into a nightmare. After sustaining severe damage from depth charges during an attack on a Japanese convoy, the Perch was forced to surface in enemy-controlled waters. Surrounded by destroyers and with no means of escape, the crew scuttled the submarine to prevent its capture. Taken as prisoners of war, the men of the Perch endured brutal conditions in Japanese camps. Their story, though tragic, highlighted the high stakes and human cost of submarine warfare. The psychological toll of these missions was immense. Extended patrols often lasted weeks, with crews confined to the submarine's cramped quarters and subjected to constant danger. Men developed rituals and coping mechanisms to endure the relentless pressure. On the USS Gato, for example, the crew maintained a tradition of writing postcards to themselves, detailing the events of their patrols. These notes, mailed to family members upon the submarine's return, became cherished keepsakes and a testament to their survival. Despite the hardships, early successes demonstrated the potential of submarines to alter the strategic landscape. By targeting troop transports, fuel tankers, and supply ships, American submarines forced Japan to allocate more resources to convoy protection, stretching its navy thin. These undersea warriors not only disrupted enemy operations, but also paved the way for more ambitious campaigns that would come later in the war. Their courage and innovation transformed the submarine force into one of the most effective weapons in the Allied arsenal. The early months of the Pacific War saw American submariners evolve from lone predators to orchestrators of a coordinated blockade that would strangle Japan's supply lines. This transformation was not immediate. It required daring experimentation and the development of new tactics. Submarines, once considered secondary naval assets, emerged as a linchpin in the broader Allied strategy. The waters around the Solomon Islands became a proving ground for these strategies. By late 1942, American submarines began implementing the concept of a strategic blockade, targeting vital shipping lanes that connected Japan's conquered territories. The focus was clear: cut off supplies of oil, rubber, and other resources essential to the Japanese war machine. Submarine commanders coordinated patrols to maximize coverage, turning the Pacific into a gauntlet for Japanese convoys. One such operation involved the USS Gudgeon, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Elton Joe Grenfell. The Gudgeon had the distinction of being the first American submarine to sink an enemy warship after the attack on Pearl Harbor. During a patrol in early 1942, Grenfell identified a Japanese submarine tender escorted by destroyers. Operating in dangerous proximity to the enemy, the Gudgeon maneuvered into position and launched a spread of torpedoes, sinking the tender. The mission demonstrated the effectiveness of coordinated ambushes, where submarines leveraged intelligence to intercept high-value targets. Not all missions targeted military vessels. The USS Silversides became known for its attacks on supply ships, often lurking near enemy ports to strike, when convoys were at their most vulnerable. On one such mission, Silversides intercepted a convoy transporting raw materials to Japan's factories. Captain Creed Burlingame, a meticulous planner, used a combination of reconnaissance and bold maneuvering to disable two freighters. The explosions illuminated the night sky, but the success came at a cost. The Silversides narrowly avoided detection by patrolling aircraft and destroyers, forcing the crew into a harrowing 48-hour game of cat and mouse. American submariners were not alone in shaping this undersea campaign. Intelligence gathered by codebreakers at Pearl Harbor played a vital role. By intercepting and deciphering Japanese naval codes, the Allies gained critical insights into convoy routes and schedules. Armed with this information, submarines like the USS Flying Fish and USS Trigger executed precision strikes, sinking troop transports and oil tankers that were vital to Japan's war effort. The success of the blockade depended on more than just strategy. It relied on the ingenuity of individual crews. The USS Drum, under the command of Lieutenant Commander Robert Rice, epitomized this adaptability. During a patrol in the South China Sea, the Drum encountered an unexpected challenge: a Japanese patrol craft using unorthodox zigzagging maneuvers to evade torpedoes. Instead of retreating, Rice ordered the Drum to surface under cover of darkness. Using its deck gun, a weapon rarely relied upon in submarine warfare, the crew destroyed the patrol craft before submerging to avoid retaliation. These early operations were not without setbacks. The USS Grenadier's patrol in the Java Sea ended disastrously when it was caught by a Japanese aircraft while surfacing to recharge batteries. A direct bomb hit left the Grenadier disabled, and the crew scuttled the vessel to prevent its capture. The surviving submariners were taken prisoner, enduring brutal conditions in Japanese POW camps. Their sacrifice underscored the high stakes of submarine warfare and the resilience required to face such dangers. The introduction of wolf pack tactics, groups of submarines coordinating attacks on convoys, marked a turning point in the campaign. While this approach had been pioneered by German U-boats in the Atlantic, American commanders adapted it to the unique challenges of the Pacific. Operating over vast distances and with limited support, these coordinated strikes required meticulous planning and precise execution. In one notable instance, the USS Grayback, USS Shad, and USS Grampus worked together to intercept a heavily armed convoy near the Bismarck Archipelago. Using staggered attacks, the three submarines overwhelmed the escorts, sinking several ships and crippling the convoy. The lessons from these encounters shaped the evolution of submarine tactics. Early in the war, many commanders preferred cautious approaches, prioritizing survival over aggression. However, the growing success of bold strategies, exemplified by commanders like Morton of the Wahoo and Burlingame of the Silversides, inspired a shift in doctrine. Aggression, coupled with detailed intelligence and precise coordination, became the hallmark of the American submarine force. By the end of 1942, the strategic blockade was yielding tangible results. Japanese merchant shipping losses mounted, forcing the Imperial Navy to divert warships to convoy protection. This reallocation of resources weakened Japan's offensive capabilities and disrupted its ability to sustain its vast empire. Submarines had proven their worth not only as hunters, but as architects of a broader strategy that reshaped the Pacific theater. These early victories came at a cost. Submarine crews faced near constant danger, and their successes often hinged on split-second decisions. The ability to adapt to evolving threats, from enemy aircraft to increasingly sophisticated escort tactics, defined the submarine campaign. As the blockade tightened, the silent shadows of the Pacific continued their relentless pursuit of Japan's lifelines, laying the groundwork for the eventual Allied victory. The story of the USS Tang stands out as one of the most dramatic and heroic chapters in the annals of submarine warfare during World War II. Commanded by the fearless and innovative Richard Dick O'Kane, the Tang exemplified the daring spirit and relentless determination of America's silent warriors. O'Kane, who had served as executive officer on the famed USS Wahoo under Dudley Mush Morton, brought a wealth of experience and a bold approach to submarine combat when he took command of the Tang in 1943. The Tang's patrols were characterized by audacious attacks and nerve-wracking escapes. On one such mission in the South China Sea, O'Kane received intelligence of a heavily guarded Japanese convoy transporting troops and supplies to reinforce island garrisons. Understanding the stakes, he devised a plan to infiltrate the convoy at night, using the cover of darkness and the Tang's superior speed and maneuverability. The submarine slipped past the escorting destroyers, coming within torpedo range of the convoy's largest transport. O'Kane ordered a rapid firing sequence, launching 4 torpedoes in quick succession. The first struck the transport amidships, setting off a massive explosion that illuminated the surrounding waters. Chaos erupted as the convoy scattered, and the Tang moved swiftly to reposition for another attack. The remaining torpedoes found their marks, sinking 2 additional ships. As the Tang evaded the panicked destroyer's depth charges, O'Kane's calm under pressure inspired his crew to maintain their composure during the harrowing retreat. Despite these successes, not all encounters ended in victory. On one occasion, the Tang's sonar detected the distinct ping of an enemy destroyer closing in fast. The Japanese ship was using a tactic known as creeping attack, a slow and deliberate approach designed to pinpoint a submarine's location with precision. With oxygen levels dwindling and the destroyer's depth charges growing dangerously accurate, O'Kane ordered the Tang to dive deeper than the vessel's design specifications recommended. The gamble paid off. The destroyer's depth charges detonated harmlessly above them, but the experience underscored the perilous nature of submarine warfare, where even a minor miscalculation could spell disaster. The crew's relief was palpable as the Tang finally surfaced hours later under the cover of a moonless night. O'Kane's tactical genius was matched by his commitment to the welfare of his crew. He was known for his meticulous preparation, ensuring that every member of the Tang's complement understood their roles in critical operations. This preparation paid dividends during one of the Tang's most famous missions, the rescue of downed American pilots near the Marianas. O'Kane risked detection by patrolling Japanese aircraft and ships to surface and bring the stranded aviators aboard. The operation was a success, and the grateful pilots, rescued from certain capture or death, became a testament to the submarine's broader role beyond sinking ships. The Tang's final patrol would solidify its place in history, albeit at a tragic cost. On October 25, 1944, during an engagement in the Taiwan Strait, the Tang executed a series of devastating attacks on a Japanese convoy, sinking several ships in rapid succession. Running low on torpedoes, O'Kane decided to target one last transport with the Tang's final weapon. The torpedo, however, malfunctioned, performing a deadly circle run that brought it back toward the Tang. The crew barely had time to react before the torpedo struck the submarine's stern, causing catastrophic damage. Most of the crew perished in the initial explosion and subsequent sinking. O'Kane and a handful of survivors were captured by the Japanese and endured the brutal conditions of prisoner-of-war camps until the war's end. Despite this tragic conclusion, the Tang's achievements remained unparalleled. It had sunk 33 enemy ships, the highest total of any American submarine in the war. The stories of the Tang and its crew highlight the profound bravery required to operate in the unforgiving environment of the undersea battlefield. From the constant threat of enemy detection to the physical and psychological strains of extended patrols, the submariners' experiences were a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. O'Kane's leadership, in particular, exemplified the qualities that define the silent shadows of the Pacific: courage, resourcefulness, and an unwavering commitment to their mission. These qualities would continue to inspire future generations of submariners long after the guns of World War II fell silent. As the Pacific War progressed, the technological evolution of submarine warfare began to tilt the balance decisively in favor of the Allies. The early limitations of torpedoes, communication systems, and navigation equipment had been glaringly apparent during the initial patrols. By mid-1943, however, a series of groundbreaking advancements transformed the submarine force into a formidable weapon capable of striking with precision and escaping with increased reliability. One of the most significant improvements came in the form of radar systems. Submarines equipped with surface search radar, such as the SJ model, gained an unparalleled advantage in locating enemy convoys at night or in poor visibility. The radar's ability to detect ships beyond the range of visual observation allowed commanders to plan attacks with far greater efficiency. This was vividly demonstrated by the USS Barb during its patrols in the East China Sea. Commanded by Eugene Fluckey, a daring and innovative leader, the Barb used its radar to intercept Japanese shipping lanes with pinpoint accuracy, earning the nickname the submarine that sank a train for its unconventional land-based sabotage mission later in the war. Sonar technology also saw remarkable advancements. Initially deployed as a defensive tool, sonar enabled submarines to detect enemy vessels and torpedoes even when submerged. The USS Cobia relied heavily on sonar during a mission to protect Allied invasion forces in the Philippines. Positioned as a picket against Japanese reinforcements, the Cobia intercepted an enemy destroyer squadron attempting to disrupt the landings. Using sonar to track the destroyer's movements, the Cobia launched a perfectly timed torpedo salvo, sinking 2 vessels and forcing the others to retreat. The mission not only showcased the tactical utility of sonar, but also demonstrated the crucial role of submarines in supporting broader naval operations. Torpedo reliability had also undergone a revolution by 1944. The flawed Mark 14 torpedo, notorious for its tendency to either fail to detonate or run at incorrect depths, was gradually replaced by an improved version with magnetic exploders that functioned more consistently. This technical refinement allowed submarine crews to attack with greater confidence. The USS Archerfish, for example, achieved one of the war's most spectacular successes when it sank the Japanese aircraft carrier Shinano, the largest warship ever destroyed by a submarine. The Archerfish's crew meticulously planned their attack, taking advantage of the improved torpedoes to ensure a lethal strike. The introduction of high-frequency direction finding, HF/DF, equipment, colloquially known as HFDUF, was another game-changer. This technology enabled Allied submarines to intercept and triangulate enemy radio transmissions, providing valuable intelligence on convoy routes and naval operations. The USS Batfish became particularly adept at using HFDUF to hunt Japanese submarines, sinking 3 enemy boats in the span of 4 days during a patrol in early 1945. This achievement underscored the dual role of American submarines as both hunters and protectors of Allied naval dominance. Beyond the battlefield, the contributions of engineers and scientists were indispensable. Figures like Vannevar Bush and the team at the Naval Research Laboratory worked tirelessly to develop technologies that enhanced the submariner's effectiveness and survivability. The creation of the snorkel system, for instance, allowed submarines to run diesel engines while submerged, reducing the need for risky surface operations to recharge batteries. This innovation significantly increased the operational range and stealth of American submarines, giving them a critical edge in the vast expanses of the Pacific. One of the most striking examples of technological ingenuity in action occurred during the USS Nautilus's patrols in the Aleutian Islands. Tasked with disrupting Japanese supply lines to their northernmost garrisons, the Nautilus encountered thick fog and treacherous currents that rendered traditional navigation methods nearly useless. The crew employed a prototype version of Loran long-range navigation equipment, which utilized radio signals to determine the submarine's precise position. The system proved invaluable, enabling the Nautilus to execute its mission with unprecedented accuracy and setting the stage for widespread adoption of Loran in post-war naval operations. The constant evolution of submarine technology was not without its challenges. Crews had to master new systems under the pressures of war, often with limited training and in the midst of combat deployments. Mistakes were inevitable, and the learning curve was steep. During its first mission with a newly installed radar system, the USS Bluefish inadvertently exposed its position by leaving the radar running too long, drawing the attention of a patrolling Japanese destroyer. The ensuing depth charge attack left the submarine heavily damaged, but taught its crew valuable lessons in the careful management of their advanced equipment. The integration of these technological advancements with the daring and ingenuity of submarine crews resulted in a force capable of executing complex and high-risk missions with increasing success. Submarines became the silent guardians of the Allied advance, gathering intelligence, disrupting supply lines, and providing critical support to amphibious operations. The lessons learned and innovations developed during this period not only shaped the outcome of World War II, but also laid the foundation for the modern era of submarine warfare. The relentless pursuit of technological superiority, combined with the courage and adaptability of submarine crews, transformed the Pacific Campaign into a proving ground for the future of naval combat. The silent shadows of the Pacific, armed with cutting-edge tools and unwavering resolve, continued their mission to strike at the heart of the Japanese war effort, inching ever closer to ultimate victory. As the tide of war turned in the Pacific, the Allies recognized the need for greater coordination among their submarine forces. The sprawling geography of the theater, combined with the diverse naval capabilities of Allied nations, demanded a cohesive strategy. Submarine operations in this phase were no longer solely an American endeavor, but a truly multinational effort, bringing together the expertise, resources, and resilience of the United States, Great Britain, Australia, and the Netherlands. The Allies faced a common adversary in the Japanese Empire, whose naval dominance was underpinned by well-defended supply lines stretching across thousands of miles. Breaking these lifelines required not only aggressive patrolling, but also the pooling of intelligence, technology, and personnel across Allied navies. Submarines became the linchpin of this cooperation, executing missions that combined stealth, firepower, and reconnaissance to devastating effect. One of the most pivotal contributions to Allied coordination came from British cryptographers at Bletchley Park. Their work in deciphering Japanese naval codes provided a wealth of actionable intelligence. By early 1943, this intelligence allowed American submarines to intercept critical convoys in the South China Sea, while Dutch submarines targeted Japanese troop transports in the East Indies. The collaboration between cryptographic units and submarine forces resulted in a devastating reduction of Japan's ability to resupply its far-flung garrisons. The Australians, too, played a vital role. Operating from bases in Fremantle and Brisbane, Australian submariners worked alongside their American counterparts, leveraging local knowledge of regional waterways to enhance patrol effectiveness. One of the most notable joint missions involved the USS Bowfin and the HMAS Cuttable, which together disrupted Japanese shipping routes off the northern coast of New Guinea. Using coordinated attacks, the two submarines decimated a convoy carrying fuel and munitions intended for Japanese forces, underscoring the value of multinational teamwork. The Dutch Navy, though severely diminished after the fall of the East Indies, made significant contributions with its surviving submarines. Operating under Allied command, Dutch boats like the O-19 carried out high-risk reconnaissance missions in the Java Sea. These missions provided crucial intelligence on Japanese troop movements and naval deployments, often at great personal risk to the crews. The O-19's daring maneuvers through mine-infested waters earned it a reputation as one of the most resourceful and resilient submarines in the Allied fleet. Coordination extended beyond joint missions to include the sharing of technology and tactics. The Royal Navy introduced advanced sonar equipment, which American submarines quickly adapted for use in their patrols. Meanwhile, American engineers assisted in retrofitting older British and Dutch submarines with modernized torpedo systems. These technological exchanges not only enhanced the capabilities of Allied submarines, but also fostered a sense of unity among their crews, who shared a common purpose despite their diverse nationalities. The importance of coordinated base operations cannot be overstated. Bases like Pearl Harbor, Fremantle, and Trincomalee became hubs of logistical support, where submarines from different nations could resupply, repair, and regroup. These bases also served as venues for sharing lessons learned, with commanders debriefing one another on the latest enemy tactics and effective countermeasures. One such debriefing at Fremantle led to the refinement of wolf pack tactics, enabling submarines from multiple nations to coordinate simultaneous attacks on large convoys. The Allies' ability to integrate their efforts was exemplified during the Battle of the Bismarck Sea in March 1943. Allied submarines, working in tandem with their reconnaissance and bomber groups, played a crucial role in the annihilation of a Japanese convoy attempting to reinforce positions in New Guinea. Submarines like the USS Gato and the British HMS Trusty sank several troop transports, while reconnaissance reports from Dutch submarines guided Allied bombers to their targets. The operation marked a high point in inter-Allied cooperation, demonstrating how submarines could serve as both hunters and scouts in a larger combined arms strategy. Despite these successes, challenges persisted. Language barriers, differing operational doctrines, and the inherent risks of submarine warfare tested the limits of Allied cooperation. During one mission in the Celebes Sea, miscommunication between an Australian and an American submarine resulted in a near collision during a coordinated attack. Such incidents underscored the need for standardized procedures and clearer lines of communication, which became a focus of Allied naval conferences in late 1943. The camaraderie forged among Allied submariners extended beyond the battlefield. At bases like Brisbane, sailors from different nations shared stories of their exploits over drinks and meals, building friendships that transcended national borders. These interactions created a unique esprit de corps, uniting the men in their shared mission against a common foe. The coordinated efforts of Allied submarine forces significantly weakened Japan's strategic position. By 1944, the combined impact of submarine operations had halved Japan's merchant fleet, crippling its ability to sustain its military campaigns. The lessons learned from this cooperation would influence naval strategy for decades to come, highlighting the power of unity and shared purpose in overcoming even the most formidable challenges. The submarine missions conducted deep within the heavily guarded waters of the Japanese home island stand as some of the boldest and most daring exploits of the Pacific War. These missions showcase the sheer audacity and unyielding resolve of Allied submariners who ventured into the lion's den, often knowing that survival was far from guaranteed. Among these courageous endeavors, the exploits of the USS Wahoo, commanded by Dudley Mush Morton, remain legendary. Morton's leadership style was a unique blend of calculated risk-taking and charismatic determination. He transformed the Wahoo into one of the most feared submarines of the war, instilling in his crew the confidence to take on missions that others might have deemed impossible. In one particularly audacious mission, the Wahoo penetrated the heavily patrolled Sea of Japan, an area long considered a near-impenetrable fortress due to its dense minefields, vigilant destroyers, and air patrols. Morton's bold strategy was to exploit gaps in enemy coverage by traveling submerged during daylight and surfacing only at night to recharge the batteries. This grueling pattern allowed the Wahoo to remain undetected as it approached its targets. Once inside the Sea of Japan, the Wahoo unleashed a devastating series of attacks on Japanese shipping. In a single patrol, Morton and his crew sank 8 enemy vessels, dealing a severe blow to the Japanese supply chain. Each successful strike further emboldened the crew, but the return journey was fraught with peril. After evading multiple depth charge attacks, the Wahoo narrowly escaped through a perilous minefield, relying on Morton's expert navigation and the steadfastness of his crew. While Morton's aggressive tactics earned him acclaim, the missions also highlighted the broader impact of submarines in disrupting Japan's logistical capabilities. The targeting of transports and tankers directly undermined Japan's ability to sustain its war effort. This strategic focus was mirrored by other submarines, such as the USS Tang, which achieved a significant victory by sinking the Japanese aircraft carrier Shinyo. The Tange's commander, James Fife, meticulously planned the attack, timing his torpedoes to strike just as the carrier was refueling, a critical moment that ensured maximum destruction. The role of submarines extended beyond offensive operations to include critical rescue missions. As Allied bombing campaigns intensified, American submarines were tasked with recovering downed pilots from the waters near Japan. These operations required extraordinary bravery, as the submarines often had to surface within sight of enemy airfields and shore batteries. The USS Tang, under the leadership of Richard O'Kane, executed one such mission with characteristic daring, saving multiple pilots while evading enemy patrols. The rescued aviators would later recount their harrowing experiences, describing the submariners as angels beneath the waves. Submarine missions also showcased the ingenuity and adaptability of their crews. One of the most innovative operations involved the USS Barb, commanded by Eugene Fluckey. Fluckey's crew conducted a night raid on a Japanese coastal railway, becoming the only American submarine crew to conduct a land-based attack. Using a small team armed with explosives, the Barb's crew destroyed a train carrying military supplies, demonstrating the versatility of submariners in executing unconventional warfare. Despite these triumphs, the risks of these missions were immense. The USS Harder, commanded by Sam Dealey, epitomized the high stakes of submarine warfare. Known for his aggressive approach, Dealey and his crew sank numerous destroyers in waters teeming with enemy patrols. During one of its final missions, the Harder was lost, likely due to a depth charge attack. The crew's sacrifice underscored the sobering reality of submarine operations. For every celebrated victory, there were silent tragedies. The legacy of these daring missions cannot be overstated. By penetrating Japanese waters and striking at the heart of the Empire's supply network, Allied submarines forced the Japanese military to divert resources away from offensive operations to protect vital shipping routes. This shift in focus weakened Japan's ability to sustain its territorial ambitions and contributed to the overall Allied strategy of attrition. The bravery and innovation displayed in these missions continue to inspire, serving as a testament to the indomitable spirit of the submariners who ventured into the depths of enemy territory. Their efforts not only reshaped the course of the war, but also cemented their place in history as some of the most fearless warriors of the Pacific theater. The grim reality of submarine warfare was that for every celebrated mission or decorated commander, there were countless sacrifices and untold stories of loss. The bravery of the submariners was matched only by the price many of them paid, navigating a line between triumph and tragedy. Among the most poignant tales is that of the USS Gudgeon, one of the earliest U.S. submarines to operate in the Pacific. The Gudgeon earned a reputation for its effectiveness in sinking Japanese vessels. However, its legacy is not just one of victory, but also of mystery. In April 1944, the Gudgeon departed on its 12th war patrol, never to be heard from again. While its exact fate remains unknown, evidence suggests it may have been lost to a Japanese air attack near the Mariana Islands. The loss of the Gudgeon and its crew served as a stark reminder of the thin margin for error in underwater warfare. Such disappearances were not uncommon. Submarines often operated alone, far from Allied support, and when a vessel failed to return, its fate was frequently shrouded in uncertainty. For the families of the lost crews, the lack of closure compounded their grief. Memorials to the silent service began to emerge, honoring those who gave their lives in the dark depths of the Pacific. At the same time, these losses galvanized the surviving submariners, who channeled their sorrow into a renewed determination to carry on their dangerous missions. The psychological toll of submarine service was immense. Months at sea in cramped, claustrophobic quarters tested the mental resilience of even the most seasoned sailors. The threat of depth charge attacks, combined with the monotony of long patrols, created an environment of constant tension. Crew members often relied on humor and camaraderie to cope. Stories abound of impromptu talent shows, makeshift games, and the use of lucky charms to ward off bad omens. However, the stress of combat and isolation occasionally led to frayed tempers and conflicts among the crew. A particularly harrowing account comes from the USS Trigger, which faced relentless depth charge attacks during one of its patrols. For hours, the crew endured the deafening blasts, the submarine shaking violently with each near hit. One sailor later recounted how the entire crew held their breath each time an explosion rocked the hull, knowing that a direct hit could end their lives instantly. When the attack finally ceased, the emotional release was overwhelming. Some crew members laughed hysterically, while others broke down in tears. The Trigger survived the ordeal and went on to complete its mission, but the psychological scars remained. Tragic errors also contributed to the cost of submarine warfare. Friendly fire incidents, although rare, did occur. In one case, a submarine mistook an Allied ship for an enemy vessel and launched torpedoes, causing significant damage and loss of life. Such incidents were devastating for the crews involved, leading to feelings of guilt and questions about the fog of war that could turn comrades into unintended targets. Despite the risks and losses, the submariners' commitment to their mission never wavered. One of the most remarkable acts of bravery occurred during the rescue of Allied prisoners of war held on Japanese ships. Known as Hell ships, these vessels were used to transport POWs under appalling conditions. Submarines like the USS Pampanito and USS Celian intercepted these transports, often under heavy escort, and launched attacks that saved hundreds of lives. However, such missions were fraught with difficulty, as submariners had to balance the urgency of the rescue with the need to avoid harming the very prisoners they sought to save. The human cost of submarine warfare extended beyond the battlefield. Many veterans returned home bearing the weight of their experiences. Post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD), though not widely recognized at the time, affected countless submariners who struggled to reintegrate into civilian life. Efforts to support these veterans included the establishment of submarine veterans associations, where former sailors could share their stories and find solace among those who understood their unique experiences. Memorials and oral histories became essential in preserving the legacy of these underwater heroes. The USS Bowfin Submarine Museum and Park in Pearl Harbor stands as a tribute to the sacrifices and achievements of the silent service. Visitors can explore a preserved submarine and hear firsthand accounts from surviving submariners, ensuring that their stories are not forgotten. The submariners' sacrifices served a greater purpose. Their relentless attacks on Japanese supply lines and naval assets played a pivotal role in undermining the enemy's war effort. For every loss, there were countless lives saved by the strategic victories these submarines achieved. Their resilience and determination became a cornerstone of the Allied success in the Pacific, reminding future generations of the extraordinary cost of freedom. As the tide of war began to turn in the Pacific, submarine operations entered a critical phase. The lead-up to the Battle of Leyte Gulf showcased the pivotal role of the silent service, which had systematically crippled Japanese supply chains and fleet movements. These missions not only set the stage for one of the most decisive naval battles of World War II, but also demonstrated the unyielding resolve and ingenuity of the submariners. By mid-1944, the U.S. Navy had established dominance in the Pacific theater, but the Japanese Navy remained a formidable force. Determined to regain control, Japan aimed to consolidate its strength around the Philippines. Recognizing this strategy, Admiral Chester W. Nimitz and General Douglas MacArthur identified the Philippines as the next critical battleground. Submarines were tasked with cutting off Japanese reinforcements and supplies, ensuring that the enemy fleet would be vulnerable when the Allied invasion began. One of the most impactful operations during this period was the use of submarines as forward scouts. Positioned near key choke points, these vessels monitored Japanese fleet movements and relayed intelligence to Allied command. This coordination proved vital. In late October 1944, the USS Dace and USS Darter were stationed near Palawan Passage when they intercepted a massive Japanese fleet led by Admiral Takeo Kurita. This force, known as the Center Force, included battleships, cruisers, and destroyers tasked with disrupting the Allied invasion of Leyte. The Darter struck first, launching torpedoes that hit and sank the heavy cruiser Atago, Admiral Kurita's flagship. As chaos erupted among the Japanese ships, the Dace followed up with an attack on the cruiser Takao, forcing it to retreat. The submarine's success in disrupting the center force delayed its arrival in Leyte Gulf, giving the Allies crucial time to prepare for the confrontation. This coordination between submarines and surface fleets was a hallmark of Allied strategy by this stage of the war. Unlike Japan, whose submarine doctrine focused on fleet engagements and sporadic attacks, the U.S. Navy had perfected the art of integrating submarines into broader operational plans. Their roles extended beyond sinking ships. They were instrumental in laying mines, rescuing downed pilots, and gathering intelligence. This adaptability made them indispensable during the lead-up to Leyte Gulf. The psychological impact of these missions on Japanese forces was profound. With each sinking, the Japanese Navy grew more paranoid about submarine threats. Convoys adopted erratic routes to evade detection, often delaying critical shipments of food, fuel, and ammunition. This logistical disruption weakened Japan's ability to sustain its war effort, leaving its forces on the front lines undersupplied and vulnerable. The Battle of Leyte Gulf itself was a testament to the effectiveness of submarine operations. While surface ships and carrier-based aircraft dominated the headlines, submarines continued their relentless pursuit of enemy vessels. The USS Icefish and USS Ray patrolled the outskirts of the battle, targeting retreating Japanese ships. The Icefish sank a large transport carrying reinforcements, while the Ray claimed a tanker, further depriving the enemy of vital resources. Despite these triumphs, the submariners faced immense challenges. The waters around the Philippines were heavily patrolled by Japanese anti-submarine forces, which deployed depth charges and sonar-equipped ships. The USS Barb, under the command of the audacious Eugene Fluckey, narrowly escaped destruction during one such patrol. Pursued by destroyers, the Barb dove to unprecedented depths, using thermal layers to evade detection. The crew endured hours of tension as depth charges exploded around them, but their discipline and expertise ensured their survival. For the submariners, the Battle of Leyte Gulf represented both the culmination of their efforts and a turning point in the war. Their ability to neutralize key Japanese assets and disrupt supply lines had a direct impact on the outcome of the battle. By the time the Allied forces secured the Philippines, the Japanese Navy was no longer a cohesive fighting force. The losses it suffered, combined with the strategic dominance of the Silent Service, marked the beginning of the end for Japan's maritime ambitions. In the aftermath of Leyte, Allied submarines continued to press their advantage. They expanded their operations into the South China Sea, targeting what remained of Japan's merchant fleet. These missions were often grueling, as submariners confronted not only enemy threats, but also the unforgiving conditions of the Pacific. Yet their resolve never wavered. Each torpedo launched, each ship sunk brought the Allies closer to victory. As the war progressed, the camaraderie among submariners became a defining feature of their service. Veterans of the silent service often spoke of the unbreakable bonds forged during these perilous missions. They shared a profound understanding of the sacrifices required to secure victory, knowing that their efforts had played a crucial role in changing the course of history. With Leyte Gulf behind them, the submariners looked ahead to the final stages of the Pacific Campaign. Their mission was far from over, but their legacy was already secure. They had proven that even in the most hostile environments, the ingenuity and determination of a few could alter the fate of millions. As the Pacific War neared its end, the role of submarines became more than just a tactical advantage. They emerged as symbols of relentless perseverance and ingenuity. With the Japanese Empire cornered, the silent service continued to strike with precision, paving the way for the Allied victory. These final months were marked by daring missions, technological advancements, and the bittersweet conclusion of a grueling campaign. By 1945, Japan's ability to sustain its war effort had been crippled. American submarines had decimated their merchant fleet, sinking over 1,300 ships and ensuring that essential supplies never reached their destinations. The impact of this campaign reverberated across Japan's remaining military operations. Soldiers on remote islands faced starvation, airfields ran out of fuel, and the Imperial Navy struggled to maintain even basic patrols. These outcomes were the direct result of years of coordinated submarine warfare. One of the defining moments of the final months was the role submarines played in Operation Starvation, a strategic effort to mine Japanese harbors and shipping lanes. Submarines like the USS Tang deployed advanced mines near key choke points, effectively paralyzing Japan's internal transport network. Unlike traditional battles, these missions required meticulous planning and execution. The ability to stealthily plant mines in enemy-controlled waters underscored the versatility of the silent service. As Japan's Navy grew increasingly desperate, American submarines found themselves facing new challenges. One such moment came during the mission of the USS Archerfish. In November 1944, the Archerfish intercepted the Shinano, the largest aircraft carrier ever built. Initially designed as a battleship, the Shinano had been hastily converted into a carrier following Japan's devastating losses at Midway. It was an engineering marvel, but its rushed construction left vulnerabilities that the Archerfish exploited. Firing 6 torpedoes, the submarine sealed the fate of the Shinano, which sank with heavy loss of life. This marked the largest warship ever sunk by a submarine, a testament to the decisive power of these underwater hunters. The victory against the Shinano symbolized not only technical prowess, but also the strategic mindset of submarine crews. Their ability to adapt to shifting priorities, from targeting supply lines to engaging capital ships, showcased their essential role in achieving Allied dominance. Yet these successes came at a cost. The toll of prolonged service on submarine crews was immense. Many sailors faced the psychological strain of extended deployments in cramped, hostile environments. The constant threat of detection, combined with the monotony of daily routines, wore heavily on even the most experienced crews. Letters from home were rare, and the news they contained often lagged behind the events unfolding on the front lines. Despite these challenges, camaraderie and a shared sense of mission bonded these men, enabling them to persevere through the darkest moments. By the summer of 1945, Allied forces were preparing for the final assault on Japan. Submarines played a crucial role in gathering intelligence for the planned invasion, codenamed Operation Downfall. They scouted landing zones, monitored Japanese troop movements, and intercepted messages that revealed enemy defensive strategies. Their reconnaissance work saved countless lives, ensuring that the Allies approached the invasion with as much foreknowledge as possible. The war, however, ended before Operation Downfall could be executed. On August 6th and 9th, 1945, the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced Japan to surrender. For submariners, the news brought mixed emotions. While they rejoiced at the prospect of returning home, Many were haunted by the memories of comrades who would never share in the victory. In the weeks following Japan's surrender, submarines were tasked with enforcing the terms of the armistice. They patrolled the seas to ensure compliance and escorted Allied ships to Japanese ports. Submariners also played a humanitarian role, aiding in the evacuation of prisoners of war and distributing supplies to civilians suffering from the effects of the conflict. As the war came to a close, the silent service faced an uncertain future. Many submarines were decommissioned, their technological marvels no longer needed in peacetime. Some were repurposed for research, while others were sunk during naval exercises or scrapped. For the men who had served aboard them, the transition to civilian life was often challenging. The camaraderie of the submarine force, forged in the crucible of war, was difficult to replicate in the outside world. Veterans of the silent service became advocates for preserving the history of their contributions. Memorials and museums were established to honor their sacrifices, ensuring that future generations would understand the pivotal role submarines played in the Pacific War. From the USS Boffin Museum in Pearl Harbor to the preserved USS Pampanito in San Francisco, these tributes stand as reminders of the courage and ingenuity of the silent shadows. The lessons of the submarine campaign in the Pacific remain relevant to this day. It demonstrated the value of adaptability in warfare, the importance of technological innovation, and the profound impact of teamwork and leadership under pressure. Above all, it highlighted the resilience of individuals committed to a shared cause. In the final analysis, the Silent Service's achievements were more than just tactical victories. They were a testament to the enduring human spirit. These men turned the tide of war, often at great personal cost, and their legacy continues to inspire those who walk in their footsteps. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps this community growing and motivates me to bring you more incredible stories.